Hi, my name's David Peters, and I'm shooting this on an iPhone 5, so the technology is pretty much me pushing the button and stopping the button. So if you're looking for special effects or anything, it's not going to happen. But what I'm here to talk to you about is what we're doing here in the Episcopal Veterans Fellowship and these groups that you've chosen to be part of. I want to thank you for taking that first step to move towards healing and hope and on your long journey home from war. I'm an Iraq veteran. I've served in the Marine Corps as an enlisted combat engineer, and I've also served as an Army chaplain in Iraq. And so I understand what it's meant for me to come home from war and to then look around at a world that I don't understand, a world that changed while I was gone. I thought that's what the case was. In fact, it was me who changed, and it was my world that changed when I was away. And so coming home to this world that is now the new normal, takes a community, and we want to be here to walk with you as you make your own journey home from war, whether it's World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Bosnia, Gulf War I, Iraq, Afghanistan, or any other conflict that happened in between, because the truth about veterans and all of us is that military service shaped our world at a very young age often. It shaped our whole experience. It changed the way we see the world. And this is a world that God cares a lot about. And as the church, we need to be able to be there for people who are going through this kind of journey. I want to read a verse from the book of Numbers, which is in the Old Testament. It's one of the most ancient books in our Bible, and it's the Lord speaking to Moses, and Moses speaking to his people. And Moses says to the people, "Avenge the people of Israel on the Midianites. Afterward you shall be gathered to your people." And the purpose there was to fight a war, to fight a battle, a series of battles, to get back what they had lost from the Midianites. And so Moses spoke to the people, saying, "Arm men from among you for the war, that they may go against Midian to execute the Lord's vengeance on Midian. You shall send 1,000 from each of the tribes of Israel to the war." So they sent a lot of folks to the war, and they rallied up, they marched in ranks, and they warred against Midian in verse 7 as the Lord commanded Moses, and killed every male. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of the slain, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. And they also killed Balaam, the son of Beor, with the sword. And the people of Israel took captive the women of Midian and their little ones, and they took as plunder all their cattle, their flocks, and all their goods. All the cities and the places where they lived and all their encampments they burned with fire, and took all the spoil and all the plunder, both of man and beast. And they brought all these things, and they presented them to the priests, to God. And in this amazing and horrific moment of victory, and yet the great loss of human life, and now a whole group of people that are enslaved, the advice to these soldiers, these warriors who went out under the banner of Israel, was that they were to take the gold, the silver, the bronze, all the metal and the lead, and burn everything that they had captured. And whatever was left over, like the metal, the iron, the gold, the lead, would then be given to God, given to the people. But everything else would be purified with water, like the cloth that they plundered. All the other articles would be then washed with water. And everyone had to wait outside the camp for 7 whole days. 7 days they waited outside the camp before they were allowed to come in. Ritual impurity was a big deal for the ancient people of Israel. It has everything to do with their kosher laws. It has everything to do with their laws of marital relations, and everything that they did before God was done making sure that they were pure, that they had done the right time of waiting. And so war is one of those things that God tells them to wait before you come home. I don't know about you, but I came home from a war in hours. I was home in just a few hours and plunged back into life thinking that everything in my life would be so much better now. And yet this ancient wisdom that comes to us from the Hebrew Bible and from our scriptures tells us that nobody comes home from war right away. There has to be a ritual purification. There has to be some kind of change in the person that killed and was part of the killing, or helped with the killing, or reinforced the killing, or cared for the killers. And there has to be some kind of change that happens to them before they come back to the community. And that's what we're working on in these groups. You can see my high-tech switcheroo here. And so we think about our own experience, and what we're doing in these groups is to provide a place where we can think about war theologically, and that means to think about war the way God thinks about war, and the way we think about war knowing that God is watching us. I've heard from a number of veterans that when they participated in war, they just put God on the shelf. You can see a shelf right back here, and just placing God on the shelf, war is over here. And someday I'll come back to that shelf and pick God up. But the problem with that is, as we come back to this community that sent us to war, we find that the God that we put on the shelf might not be there anymore. Things might have changed. And so in this first group session, we're going to look at why this happens. Why is war a theological enterprise as much as it is a physical enterprise full of blood, sweat, and tears? The power to take a life, the power to kill, the power to create death in the world is a power that only is reserved for the gods. And so as soon as we, as young men and women, take on ourselves the call to arms, as soon as we pick up those weapons that can kill people, and as soon as we are authorized to kill everyone in the room that might threaten us, or anyone that we ride by, that power of the gods becomes ours. And we hold that power in our lives. And so we carry this power with us, and we find suddenly that we're not just participating in war with our colonel and with our sergeants and with those officers and even with the enemy, but we are participating in a realm of existence that we have never felt before. And so you can imagine when someone comes home from this experience that the loss of power is just as traumatic as the power to kill, the power to take a life. We participate in this mythical realm with God and all the powers that be that can take life in this universe in war as very young people, and we come home still young but looking very old. The word veteran in Latin means old man. It means someone who has seen something that no one else has seen. They've been to the other side. They've crossed through the path of death, the valley of the shadow of death. And they've come out on the other side, and yet when you pass through the valley of the shadow of death, there's often a lot of that shadow still left inside us. That's what we're here to talk about at this group. So I encourage you to be bold. Share your stories, but not just your stories, because that won't help any of us. But share your stories and connect them to how you feel. Connect your story to how you feel about your war experience, your military experience, or the experience of the person that you love that you're here to represent. And go with us on this journey. One thing about veterans that I've learned is that we have a hard time trusting other people. When I came home from Iraq, I thought I had friends. I thought I trusted people, when in fact I didn't. And the longer, as the days ticked by and months ticked by and years from my time getting home from Iraq, I found that I trusted less and less and less people, to the point where my world became very, very small. And so learning how to trust again is something that this group is here for. We're here for each other. I'm here for you. That's why I'm making this video right now. That's why I'm getting it out to groups around Texas and around the country, because we want to make a difference. We want to build a community that can withstand the trials of homecoming. Thanks for listening to this, and I pray God's blessing on your discussion. I want to show you this Episcopal Church service cross that I have here. This is originally called the Jerusalem cross, and I'll bring it right up to the screen. I'll bring my face up too. You can see Christ died for you, and the 5 crosses on this cross illustrate the 5 wounds of Christ. The word trauma, when we talk about combat trauma, the word trauma in Greek means wound. And whether it's a wound that you've experienced on your body, in your arm, your leg, your shoulder, your head, TBI inside your head, or it's a wound that you've received in your soul, a betrayal. Things weren't the way you thought they would be, or someone sold you out, or let you down, let you go. Whatever that betrayal is, these wounds we carry with us. And we know that when we carry these wounds, that our Savior Jesus Christ carries 5 of them too.